For the longest time, if you were looking to buy a premium, long-range, all-electric vehicle and you wanted to spend under $50,000, your only choice was really the Tesla Model 3. However, in today's competitive market, we live in a world full of so many choices, and today I'm standing by two of the newest all-electric vehicles that you can buy. On my right is the brand new 2022 Hyundai Ioniq5. It can go up to 303 miles on a full charge, offers about 320 horsepower. And on my left is the all-new Ford Mustang Mach-E. This can go over 300 miles of range as well, and the GT version can offer nearly 500 horsepower. So if you guys are looking for a long-range all-electric vehicle and you don't want a Tesla, which one of these two new entries is actually the better buy? Stay tuned to find out. Okay, so technically this is not a fair comparison because Hyundai does not offer a full-on N performance version of the Ioniq5, at least just yet. I'm gonna have to wait until I get a hold of a Kia EV6 GT to do a proper comparison, because this one here, as you guys know, is a vehicle that my partner and I own. It's technically a 2021 Mustang Mach-E GT performance. This would compare favorably with its platform mate, the EV6 GT, which will also have over 500 horsepower. But because this is what I have, let's go ahead and compare these two. I'm gonna talk about this car mostly from a premium extended all-wheel drive long-range model, which does compare very favorably, of course, to the Ioniq5. Now, since I have the two vehicles side by side, let's go ahead and talk about the styling differences between these two cars. And obviously, they couldn't be more different because Ford, obviously, with the Mustang name on this vehicle, had to, give this vehicle a look that would resemble a Mustang. And that's precisely what they've done here. Let's start, of course, with the Mach-E. The GT version has its own unique front end with this grille that has kind of like this textured look to it with the sparkly gray on the inside with the illuminated pony logo. That is a really unique styling element that only comes on the GT versions, which I love. You also have these very beautiful headlights, which are inspired by Mustangs as well. You have the sequential LEDs. These are full LED headlights with LED turn signals. And in the rest of the front end, you can see, has its own unique front fascia with the black painted front splitter, this unique air intake down here, which Ford says is functional. And overall, let me know in the comment section below. I think the Mustang in this GT performance looks really good. Even though this car's been on sale for a little over 2 years now, this still turns a lot of heads, especially in this grabber blue exterior color, which you can now get on every Mustang for 2022. In contrast, let's talk about the Ioniq5 styling, because this car looks a lot smaller in pictures versus when you actually see it in person. Surprisingly, we'll talk about the dimensions when we go and look at the rest of the profile. You can see the Hyundai has a very unique front end. The company actually said for the rest of their vehicles moving forward, they're going to design a unique styling on every vehicle as opposed to making it look like smaller versions of every other car. You can see the Hyundai has very unique squared off front end design themes here. You can see this silver portion here actually has these illuminated vertical LED strips, which look really interesting at night. The headlights also have this really beautiful squared rectangular look with the pixel inspired LED daytime running lights. You have full LED headlights. You can see the turn signals are not sequential like the Mustangs, but they definitely look very distinctive. The one thing I don't love particularly, however, is this big black plastic area in the front where this grille would supposedly be. I do wonder how this is going to look after a few years when rocks start to hit it, when bugs start to get all over it. But again, you could probably say the same thing about the Mustang, but this is just a very squared off area. It's probably going to get hit with stuff. You can see the Hyundai logo here is massive. There's a nice camera right here for the front camera system with the full 360 camera. And you can see the Hyundai's design definitely is a little bit less sporty, but it's still very futuristic. Hyundai said that they used the Pony, their original car from the 80s, as design inspiration for this vehicle. It definitely has a pretty cool retro modern design theme, kind of like what Ford did with the Mustang back in 2005. So this is going to attract a lot of stares when you look at it out on the road. The one thing you're also going to notice right away for this car is the hood is significantly shorter. We'll talk about that later in the frunk space because it does make for a much smaller frunk. But you can see here, let's go look at the Hyundai's profile, the wheels. These are a 20-inch wheel that you get on the limited trims, which are standard. They're actually wrapped in wider tires versus the Mach-E. These are 255/45 series R 20-inch wheels. You can see you've got Michelin all-season tires on it. These wheels, I'm surprised at how wide they are. You can see they have this really interesting geometric texture to them, which is mimicked along the side profile. You can see there's no performance brakes on this car because, again, this is not a performance-oriented trim. You also have these really interesting textured fender flares on this vehicle, which are silver painted as opposed to being black. Again, this is supposed to be a crossover, so Hyundai tries to give it some cladding to make it feel a little bit more like a crossover. Now, looking at the rest of the vehicle from this angle, looks are deceiving because as I stand by this vehicle, I'm 5'7". This vehicle has a wheelbase that is technically longer than a Hyundai Palisade at 118.1 inches long. This wheelbase is about a ½ inch longer versus the Mach E's, which is deceiving. The overall length is 182.4 inches long, which is about 4.2 inches shorter than the Mach E's. This is about the same length as something like a Hyundai Elantra. So it's a compact car in terms of its length. Its height at about 63 inches is also about a ½ inch lower versus the Mach E, but this is technically the wider vehicle by about a ½ inch, and Hyundai says you have 6.1 inches of ground clearance. So this is a crossover, but it's certainly not an SUV. You're not going to be taking this vehicle off-roading like you would on some SUVs. Now you can see here, the roof has this really cool panoramic glass roof, which doesn't open, but it does let in a lot of light. There's also a shade here that closes if you don't want to deal with the sun. And then the door handles on this vehicle, you can see they pop out. So when the vehicle is locked, the door handles will retract in, and then as you approach the vehicle, they pop out. This is the same design on the Kia EV6. I think it looks pretty cool, but I do appreciate the look on the Mustang's door handles a little bit more. And then let's take a look at the rear of this vehicle. The pixelated rear taillights, where it also says Ioniq5, and it kind of goes on to create this kind of extensive light bar. There's even an LED light strip that connects the two lights together. Looks very futuristic and very modern. I love this design theme here. It certainly is going to attract a lot of attention. There's that same kind of silver trim here along the taillights and on the lower rear part of the bumper. You can see there's the reverse camera system. And then obviously down here, no more aggressive diffuser because remember, this isn't a performance-oriented trim. There is a small little H-track badge there to let people know that this is the all-wheel drive version. But again, there's no performance-oriented model of this vehicle just yet. Now, opening up the cargo area, I do want to show you guys what the space is like back here. You can see it has that traditional rear cargo cover, and this is a two-row vehicle. It's an SUV supposedly, but it offers around 29 cubic feet of space. If you fold down the seats, it offers about 59 cubic feet of space. That actually is a little bit less versus the Mach E, maybe like 1 or 2 cubic feet, so it's not much. Underneath here, there is a little bit of a storage compartment, although surprisingly, there's this kind of raised area here where it does eat into the space. I believe that's the subwoofer for the premium stereo system, so kind of keep that in mind. And then over here, I want to show you guys the charge port really quick because it's a power actuated opening and closing door here. And this vehicle, like I said earlier, it comes standard with 800 volt charging, which means it can charge at up to 350 kilowatts. You can DC fast charge this vehicle, which is standard on all the models, from 10 to 80% in about 18 minutes, which is 2.5 times faster versus the Mach E. So when it comes time to charge the Mach E, the charge port door is on the front driver's side, which is completely opposite what Hyundai does for the Ioniq5. The door is also not power actuated like it is on the Hyundai, and the Ford also charges a lot slower, but it does have the ability to DC fast charge and accept up to 150 kilowatts. You can see the DC fast charging port is right there. It has that CCX combo connector. This vehicle will charge from 10 to 80% in about 45 minutes. Compare that to the 18 minutes, of course, on the Ioniq5. So this vehicle here, if you guys plan on taking a lot of road trips, is not the more ideal choice. Ford definitely has to get their act together and increase the charging speed of this vehicle, which they would have to completely redesign the battery to do that. It technically can't be done with an over-the-air update. Now, let's talk a little about the side profile of the Mach E. The GT versions, I love how the fenders here are body colored. All the other Mach E's will have this kind of black painted area. The wheels are also very unique on this GT Performance. You can see these are a really beautiful multi-spoke design, which are kind of a pain in the butt to clean, but they look great compared to the flower power wheels that you find on the regular GT. You can see the brakes also are Brembo red painted calipers because this is the GT Performance. We technically replaced out the Pirelli P0 tires with these Michelin Pilot Sport 4 all-season tires, which definitely improved the ride quality and made the vehicle usable in cold weather, but it is probably going to lower the performance in actual dry weather testing. But this model here, of course, is the performance version, which Hyundai, again, does not offer something like that. Now, as I stand along the side profile of the Mach E, this vehicle is around 186.7 inches long. So compared to the Ioniq5, it's about 4.2 inches longer. Like I said, its wheelbase is 117.5 inches long, so about a ½ an inch smaller versus the Ioniq5. The Mustang also is about 63.5 inches tall, so a ½ an inch taller. You also have this panoramic glass roof on the Mustang, which also doesn't open, but you can see it kind of gives you an all black painted roof effect. Technically, Ford made an all black roof standard on all the GT versions for 2022. And then you can see here the door handles on the Mustang. You guys probably are familiar with this by now. They are power actuated, so you have this little handle here. If you push that, the door pops open, and if you want to try to shut it, there's a little safety protocol there which won't actually let the door shut unless you pull the door out. You can see it has that typical keyless entry keypad that Ford does, which they've kind of redesigned it to be digital in the pillar. And you can see for the rear, it also has that same design here where there's a little pad here that allows you to open up the door, which is a really cool design. Everybody who sees the side profile of the Mustang loves how there's no visible door handle. So I think Ford did it right there. You can also tell the fenders are a little bit more puffed out. They're a little bit more broadly shouldered in terms of like the side profile of the vehicle, which again gives the Mustang Mach-E more of that muscle car look, because remember, it has the Mustang name. Now looking at the rear of the Mach-E, you can see it has the traditional tri-bar taillights with the sequential LEDs. I like how Ford also does an amber illumination for the LEDs. There's a GT badge here because this is the GT model. And then you can see over here on the rear diffuser, there is a little bit more of an aggressive design on the GTs. You have your reverse lights down here, along with that same black painted plastic. The cargo capacity of the Mustang also is a little bit more versus the Ioniq 5 because this vehicle is technically a little bit taller. You get around 29.5 cubic feet of space. If you fold down the seats, Ford says you get a little over 60 cubic feet. So it's technically not that much more, but it does give you a little bit more if you're looking for that. Underneath here, you can see Ford does give you a little bit more storage space underneath the floor versus the Ioniq 5. Although technically, if you guys are comparing both of these vehicles to Tesla, they do offer even more space underneath the floor of their cargo compartments. Now, because these are all electric vehicles, when you lift up both of their hoods, you're going to find an interesting new storage area called a frunk. Yes, that's right. Tesla technically pioneered that word a few years ago, but Ford is really clearly the winner here with their frunk space. Ford says the Mustang Mach-E offers 4.7 cubic feet of total space. You can see there's actually a drain plug in there. There's also some cup holders, so you can use this as a cooler. The Mustang has a much bigger frunk because if you look at the hood of this vehicle, it is significantly longer because remember, this bears the Mustang name, so Ford wanted to give it styling proportions to kind of go with that Mustang styling language. In contrast, the Ioniq 5 has a more car-like front end. It's much shorter. You also don't have that much space under here for the frunk because when you lift this up, Hyundai says you only get 0.85 cubic feet of space. That's right, 0.85 compared to almost 5 cubic feet in the Ford. It really just has enough space for the mobile level 1 charger in here. The reason being, again, like I said, this hood area is much shorter. The Ioniq 5 with all-wheel drive also includes a heat pump, so that does take a little bit more space. But remember, this is the dual motor version, just like the Mach-E. This model here has a slightly smaller frunk versus a long-range rear-drive model that doesn't have the front motor. But since we're underneath the hood, let's talk about the powertrain specs. Let me start, of course, with the Hyundai since we're over here. This model here is the fastest and most performance-oriented Ioniq 5 you can buy. It has dual electric motors for a total of 320 horsepower, 446 pound-feet of torque. Hyundai says you'll do about 256 miles on a full charge. You're pulling energy from a 77.6 kilowatt-hour battery pack, which is smaller versus the Ford. This is the larger battery pack. It comes standard on the all-wheel drive model. There's a 1-speed reduction gear transmission, of course. It is all-wheel drive. Hyundai says you'll get to 60 in about 5.1 seconds. We'll test that out and see if that claim is accurate. And of course, this one runs on the 800-volt architecture, which means it has the ability to DC fast charge from 10 to 80% in just 18 minutes, if you can find that 350 kilowatt level 3 charger, which technically only Electrify America offers that kind of speed right now. This car also will tow a maximum of 1,650 pounds, and it weighs in at just over 4,600 pounds, so it is the lighter of the two. In contrast, the Mach-E also has dual electric motors. Technically, you guys know this doesn't compare favorable with the Ioniq 5 because Hyundai does not offer a full-on N version. I'm gonna have to wait until I get a hold of a Kia EV6 GT to do a proper comparison. But the Mach-E GT also has dual electric motors, 460 horsepower, and 634 pound-feet of torque. Those are pretty impressive numbers. So you have over 140 more versus the Hyundai. Ford says this will do 0 to 60 in about 3.5 seconds. In our testing, we got around 3.7 seconds. So it's not quite as fast as Ford's claims. This car will do about 260 miles on a full charge. So technically, even though the Ford has way more power, it actually goes farther on a full charge versus the Ioniq 5 when you're just comparing the EPA numbers. The Ford draws its energy from a 91 kilowatt-hour battery pack. This is technically a 2021. It'll draw its power from an 88 kilowatt-hour. Ford actually increased the usable capacity for 2022. It also has a 1-speed reduction gear transmission. Here's the kicker. The Mach-E is actually not recommended to tow. So if you actually have to tow things, you're going to want to buy the Ioniq 5. And the Mustang is also significantly heavier because it is 4.5 inches longer almost. This one weighs in at just under 5,000 pounds. So let's quickly get behind the wheel of the Hyundai Ioniq 5 because this is the newer option. I mean, we've been waiting for a dedicated full electric vehicle from Hyundai and Kia for quite some time, and I'm hoping to redo this test when I have an EV6 GT to compare it to the Mach-E GT performance. Obviously, I'm going to keep that in mind and try to channel what I remember from when I drove Alex on Autos' Mach-E, which is the more equivalent competitor to this particular car. But regardless, getting out on the road in the Ioniq 5 dual motor with the longer range battery pack, this gives you all the right first impressions. It feels solid, it feels well planted, it feels heavy, it feels just really secure out on the road because of that skateboard platform. And it also feels like I'm driving a hatch, like a car, as opposed to a crossover. Yes, this vehicle has technically a ½ inch more ground clearance versus the Mach-E, which is strange. But I feel like I'm sitting lower in this car. So if you prefer a more car-like experience, you're gonna prefer this vehicle here. Now, I'm gonna turn off the traction control here. We're just gonna brake torque it and I'm gonna floor it. Oh, the front lifts up, kind of like the way the Mach-E does. And I'm not gonna do a 0 to 60 test, even though I have this. Feel free to click on the link in the description below to watch my full test on the Ioniq 5 just by itself. I got 4.6 seconds in my quickest 0 to 60 run. That's with a 98% charge on the battery. This is 96%, so it's not that much lower. 4.6 seconds is a smidge quicker versus what I tested when I first drove this vehicle back out in Southern California with Hyundai back in December. So very impressive. It's technically faster than Hyundai's claim of 5.1 seconds. Now, Alex said that in his Mach-E, the quickest that he got was 4.9 seconds. That is right basically on target. It's actually a smidge slower than Ford's 4.8 second claim for their Mach-E premium extended range all-wheel drive. So clearly the Hyundai is faster, and you notice that right off the line. You also notice that this vehicle is about 200 pounds lighter. Now, 200 pounds lighter is, lighter, but this is still a 4,600 pound car. But compared to the Mach-E in sport mode here, I noticed the steering is definitely quick to respond. The suspension is softer in this vehicle, and that's kind of what you notice driving this and the Mach-E back to back. It's going to give you that slightly better ride quality. I'm not going to comment on the performance edition, my tester with them, or my car with the Magno Relogical dampers, obviously, but I like the visibility in this vehicle. It technically has better visibility than the Mach-E. The seats definitely also are comfortable, but they could use a little bit softer padding. They also don't really hug you that much. Oh God, I was not expecting that with the traction control. I was not expecting that. It actually lets the back step out, which is hilarious. That's the same thing that the Kia EV6 will do, and the Mach-E will do that as well. So love the fact that this car reminds you that it's a rear drive biased car. And the other cool thing about this platform is it gives you the ability to basically disconnect the front motor if you'd like. When you have it in normal and you have it in eco mode, this vehicle will function as a single motor rear drive vehicle to, again, preserve the range of the car. But in sport mode, it kind of favors the all-wheel drive, but when the traction control is off, it'll allow you to let the tail step out, as you guys saw, and also let you do a small little burnout with the wheels, which is hilarious. That is so funny. That is so comical. I was not expecting that. But nevertheless, let's talk a little bit about the range. I'm going to turn the traction control back on because this car on a full charge showed about 235 miles in this cold weather. It's 38 degrees outside. The car does have a heat pump. That actually is similar to what the Mach-E will show you as well. The Mach-E in similar conditions on a full charge showed me about 235 miles as well. The Hyundais you can kind of manipulate by changing the drive modes, turning off the heater and climate control. The Mustangs doesn't do that when you switch the drive modes, which is interesting. But you can completely reset the drive mode computer, and when you do reset it, the Mustang will show almost 250 miles on a full charge, which it's nice that you can do that, but it constantly reminds you that this is a guessometer. It's not going to be accurate, obviously. Your real world will vary. In my week's worth of testing in this car, the real world range was right around 250 miles on a full charge in these colder conditions. Now that's pretty impressive considering the fact that this car is rated to get 256 in warmer conditions. That's going to, of course, credit out to the heat pump, which does more efficiently provide heat and give you better range in cold weather testing. But overall, as a daily driver, I wasn't expecting this car to be as good as it is. It is definitely better than the ID4. Worlds better than that. It's on par with any Tesla that you can compare this to, and it's on par with any Mach-E. The Mustang definitely holds its own. All right, so now I want to do this little interesting test. Because I have both vehicles together, I've actually got my partner Keith driving the Mach-E right now. Remember, this is a Mach-E GT Performance. Hyundai doesn't technically build a car that compares with the Mustang Mach-E GT. However, I have a hunch here because Ford puts pretty strict limits on the Mach-E. You can't do more than 5 seconds of full power without the system, without the battery or the computer cutting power. And if the Mach-E's charge is below 70%, it's not going to give you full power. Now, in contrast, I've been driving this Ioniq 5 for over a week, and I'm noticing quite a few things. One, it definitely fast charges a lot better. Two, the real world range in the cold has been right around 250 miles, which is impressive considering the fact that it is cold. This car is rated at 256 in ideal conditions. So in normal weather, I'm expecting this to do much better. And this car doesn't cut power. Like, you can drive this thing down all the way to like 18% battery, put your foot down, and it still gives you full power. And the highway passing power is impressive. The Mach-E is quicker 0 to 60 by about a second. I got 3.7 seconds in the Mach-E, 4.6 in this car. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Mach-E and the Ioniq 5 on the highway are pretty similar when you're looking to just put your foot down. I'm at 71% charge, Mach-E's at 98. All right, 1, 2, 3, go. Go ahead and get over, boo. Now, you guys saw the Mach-E did get ahead of the Ioniq 5, but after 5 seconds, that car's still faster. Yep, the Mach-E is still faster, but I really want to try this again and see after 5 seconds what happens. Okay, obviously you're going to get in front of me, but let's just go ahead and do this for demonstration purposes.
Okay, on green?
Yes. Yes. Yep, from a dead stop, the Mach-E, this is where the extra power comes from, the extra $20,000. There's also a noticeable delay.
It's definitely faster.
Yes, there's also a noticeable delay in the acceleration if I don't do launch control in this car. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, go. Okay, let's see. It's been 5 seconds, come on. The Ioniq is still pulling, but so is that Mach-E. All right, so the Ioniq doesn't catch it. That's good to know for Ford. That is very good to know for Ford. Well, that was very enlightening. Thankfully, the Mach-E is still faster than the Ioniq 5 as we expected it to be. But it does prove to you that Ford really needs to get rid of those prison bars with the 5-second limit, and also give us more power even when the battery is below 70%. So nearly 5 years ago, Tesla really changed a lot of people's perception on electric cars being more affordable when they introduced the all-electric Model 3. When that car came out in 2017, it was super innovative because they finally gave us an electric vehicle that could go over 300 miles on a full charge, and it didn't cost 6 figures the way that a Tesla Model S currently does. Now, of course, as time went on, there are more and more competitors, and that's only going to continue to change as we go forward because electric is the future. And I have to say, after spending the day driving both the newest entries, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Ford Mustang Mach-E, there are several reasons out there to not buy a Tesla in 2022 because these two vehicles are just so damn good. Let me first start, of course, with my overview of the Ioniq 5. This is a very enticing electric vehicle because it is one of the quickest charging EVs that you can buy out there. This charges even faster versus a Porsche Taycan or an Audi e-tron GT. Those vehicles easily cost 2 to 3 times the price, but this vehicle will charge as fast as 18 minutes, which is really not that much longer versus a gas car. It'll do 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. With the all-wheel drive version, which is crazy fast performance, and the interior is full of a ton of space, full of a ton of tech. My only gripe with the interior is the fact that Hyundai and Kia does not do wireless Apple CarPlay or Android Auto. I think they seriously need to add that. That's really my only gripe. It might be a deal breaker for some of you, but the two 12-inch displays, the very comfortable seats, the roomy cabin, the good amount of trunk space in the back makes this a very enticing EV when you also consider the fact that it starts at around $43,650. That's before, of course, the $7,500 federal tax credit. Also keep in mind that Hyundai does not have the smaller battery pack available just yet. That's going to be about $4,000 less when it goes on sale in the spring. Let's talk a little bit about the Mustang Mach-E, of course, because this model here technically does not compare with the Ioniq 5, but we're going to talk about this car as if I had a premium extended range battery with dual motor all-wheel drive. That would compare directly with the Ioniq 5 because they are similar in specs. The Mustang also starts at around $43,850, so it's a little bit more versus the Ioniq, but the Mustang definitely has a more sportier, more aggressive look. I especially love the side profile here, of course, which is going to be similar on the premium version compared to the GT. I love the fact that it lacks door handles. This model here, of course, the GT is faster, but if you have a premium extended range all-wheel drive, those are about a half a second slower versus the Ioniq 5. The Mustang will go 277 miles on a full charge, which is technically more versus the Ioniq, but this vehicle also has a much larger battery pack, which means it isn't quite as efficient as the way it uses its energy. It also does not charge as fast. This takes roughly 45 minutes, so it's 2.5 times slower to fast charge versus the Ioniq. Now, most of you are going to charge from home, so that's really not going to matter, but if you do plan to take road trips, that is where the Hyundai's advantage is going to come into play. The Mustang's interior is beautiful, of course, with that 15.5-inch display. It has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. That's something that the Hyundai does not have. However, the Ioniq 5 also has heated and ventilated seats and a heads-up display. That's something you cannot get in the Mustang for any price. So I'm hoping that Ford will eventually add that at some point. I also want you to keep in mind the pricing. This one here is about $69,000 because it's the GT Performance. Now, if you guys can pony up the extra cash, I would still choose this because it is the quicker version, or the quicker of the two models. It also looks better in my eyes, but that's kind of a subjective thing. But if you guys were comparing this as a premium extended range all-wheel drive, this car would be about $58,000 comparably equipped. The Ioniq 5 would be about $55,000 comparably equipped. Both still qualify for the $7,500 federal tax credit. And for me, if I was comparing the two cars directly, I would personally go with the Hyundai Ioniq 5 just because of its faster charging, its quicker acceleration, and similar amounts of interior space, and also a unique design that'll continue to turn heads because Hyundai just really nailed the retro modern design cues. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full comparison test between the newest EVs on the market, the 2022 Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Ford Mustang Mach-E. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at Redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.